Look at you, a black woman in a cheap blouse pretending she knows the law. Sergeant Travis Boone sneered as he ripped Naomi Carter's handbag from her shoulder and flung it across Liberty Square. Her wallet, keys, glasses, and a neatly wrapped gift rolled across the pavement while pedestrians stopped to stare. You people always think acting educated puts you above everyone else. Naomi stood her ground. I've done nothing wrong. Check the security cameras. Boone laughed, then drove the heel of his hand into her shoulder. I said, get on your knees. Naomi stumbled forward, her knees striking the scorching stone. Officer Megan Price jerked her arms behind her back, snapping the handcuffs so tightly that she fought back a painful gasp. Boone nudged her wallet with the toe of his boot and smirked. You should be grateful we're only embarrassing you. A black woman like you ought to remember who has the badge. Several people lowered their eyes. Officer Caleb Ross glanced nervously at the dispatch screen. Sergeant, she doesn't match the suspect description. Boone turned sharply. Then learn something today, rookie. Around here, I decide who looks guilty. Silence swept across the square. Naomi slowly lifted her eyes toward the federal courthouse standing beyond the crowd. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. Boone leaned down until his face was inches from hers. No, sweetheart, you're the mistake, and nobody in this city will ever make me answer for this. He had no idea that, in just a few days, the black woman kneeling before him would walk into a federal courtroom wearing a judge's robe, and he would be the one ordered to stand. If this moment makes you angry, stay with this story until the very end. Comment your city and your local time below, and subscribe because justice is about to arrive when they least expect it. 3 hours before Sergeant Travis Boone forced her onto the pavement, Naomi Carter was standing alone in the kitchen of her childhood home, wrapping a book in brown paper. The house sat on a quiet street near the eastern edge of Westbridge, Virginia. Its white paint had faded. The porch steps creaked exactly as they had when Naomi was a teenager. Nothing about the place suggested that the woman inside had spent the past 20 years inside some of the most demanding courtrooms in America. She pressed a strip of tape across the package and smiled at the handwritten note tucked beneath the ribbon. For Dad. Because history is never finished. Arthur Carter had taught history at Westbridge Central High School for 38 years. He had taught thousands of students, but Naomi had always been his most difficult pupil. She questioned everything, rules, traditions, authority, even him. When she was 12, she once asked why justice was represented by a blindfolded woman. Arthur had answered, because justice should not care what you look like. Then he had paused and added, but the people serving justice still have eyes. That is why character matters. The lesson had followed Naomi through law school, public defense work, federal prosecution, and eventually the bench. That morning, she had returned to Westbridge without security, without a driver, and without announcing her arrival. Her official appointment to the Federal Civil Accountability Tribunal had not yet been made public. The courthouse staff knew. A few senior officials in Washington knew. Her father knew only that she had accepted a new federal position. Naomi wanted one quiet afternoon before the ceremonies, cameras, and carefully worded speeches began. She wore navy slacks, a cream blouse, and low black shoes. Her hair was pulled into a neat bun. The only jewelry she wore was her late mother's silver bracelet. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Daniel Reed. She let it ring. Daniel was the tribunal's legal advisor, and he had already sent her 7 messages about security arrangements. Naomi placed the wrapped book inside a shopping bag and stepped outside. The August heat settled over Westbridge like a heavy blanket. She drove her own 10-year-old sedan downtown, parked 2 blocks from Liberty Square, and walked toward Dawson's Bakery, where Arthur's favorite pecan rolls were sold. Liberty Square was crowded with office workers, tourists, and families moving between restaurants and small shops. A fountain splashed in the center. Street musicians played beneath the shade of maple trees. Naomi stopped outside a flower shop called Brooks and Bloom. Lena Brooks was arranging white lilies in a metal bucket near the entrance. Those are beautiful, Naomi said. Lena looked up and smiled. They better be. They cost me half my rent. Naomi laughed. Lena studied her face. You're Arthur Carter's daughter, aren't you? I am. He still tells everyone you were the smartest student he ever taught. He tells me I talk too much. Both can be true. Naomi purchased a small bundle of yellow roses for her father. Lena wrapped them in paper and refused to charge full price. As Naomi stepped back into the square, a sharp scream rose from the outdoor cafe across the walkway. My purse! A woman in a designer dress stood beside an overturned chair. Someone stole my purse! People turned in every direction. A young man in a red jacket pushed through the crowd near the parking garage. Naomi saw him for only a second before he disappeared behind a delivery truck. Two patrol officers entered the square from the opposite side. Sergeant Travis Boone walked in front, broad-shouldered and deliberate, with one hand resting near his belt. Officer Megan Price followed him. Officer Caleb Ross, younger than the others, spoke urgently into his radio. The woman from the cafe pointed toward the crowd. He ran that way. I think he had a dark jacket. Maybe red, I don't know. Boone scanned the square. His gaze stopped on Naomi. She was standing beside the flower shop with a shopping bag in one hand and her purse over the opposite shoulder. You, he called, don't move. Naomi looked behind her, expecting someone else to respond. Boone approached. I said don't move. I'm not moving, Naomi replied. Put the bag down. Why? His expression hardened. Because I gave you an order. Naomi set the shopping bag carefully beside her feet, protecting the roses and wrapped book. Boone looked at her handbag. Open it. Am I being detained? Several people nearby turned to watch. Boone stepped closer. Open the purse. Naomi's voice remained calm. I asked whether I am being detained. Officer Price gave a humorless laugh. Here we go. Boone glanced at her, then back at Naomi. A purse was stolen. You were standing near the scene. So were at least 50 other people. You fit the description. Naomi looked down at her cream blouse and navy slacks. What description? Boone's jaw tightened. Caleb approached, holding the radio near his shoulder. Sergeant, witnesses reported a male suspect in a red jacket heading toward the garage. Boone ignored him. Naomi noticed the shift in his expression. This was no longer about a stolen purse. Her questions had become a challenge to his control. You can ask to inspect my belongings, Naomi said. But you cannot search them without consent, probable cause, or a lawful arrest. Officer Price shook her head. She watches too much television. Boone extended his hand. Give me the purse. No. It was a quiet answer. Not aggressive. Not disrespectful. But Boone heard defiance. Around them, phones began to rise. Lena stepped out of her shop, watching carefully. Boone moved closer until his shadow covered Naomi's shoes. You think knowing a few legal words makes you special? No, Naomi said. I think the law applies to both of us. His eyes narrowed. Across the square, the young man in the red jacket briefly appeared beside the parking structure before slipping behind a concrete pillar. Caleb saw him. Sergeant, I've got movement near the garage. Boone did not turn. Instead, he reached for Naomi's handbag. She stepped back instinctively. That single movement gave him the excuse he wanted. Stop resisting. I'm not resisting. Boone grabbed the strap. Naomi held on. Officer Price moved behind her. The square fell strangely quiet. Caleb looked once toward the garage and then back at his sergeant, caught between the suspect escaping in the distance and the innocent woman standing directly in front of them. Naomi's phone began ringing inside her handbag. Boone ripped the purse free. Its screen lit up through the open zipper. Federal Judicial Office. He stared at the words for half a second. Then he smirked. Well, he said, looks like somebody wants us to believe she's important. Naomi looked directly at him. You should answer that call. Boone declined it. Then he threw the phone onto the pavement. The phone skidded across the stone pavement, stopping inches from the scattered yellow roses. Naomi looked down at the cracked screen but made no move to pick it up. Sergeant Travis Boone folded his arms with a satisfied smile. Nice trick, he said. Federal Judicial Office. You expect me to believe someone like you has people in Washington calling? Naomi answered quietly. I expect you to answer the phone. Boone laughed loudly enough for the growing crowd to hear. She watches courtroom dramas and thinks she's somebody. Several people chuckled nervously, unsure whether they were witnessing a routine police stop or something far more disturbing. Officer Caleb Ross bent down and picked up the phone. It's still ringing, Sergeant. Boone snatched it from his hand, glanced at the screen once more, then pressed the decline button. There, problem solved. He tossed the phone back into Naomi's open handbag. You can explain your fake government contacts downtown. I haven't broken any law, Naomi replied. That isn't your decision. It isn't yours either. The sentence landed like a slap. Boone's face hardened. Officer Megan Price stepped forward. She keeps challenging every instruction. Boone nodded once. That tells me everything I need to know. Lena Brooks hurried across the sidewalk from her flower shop. Sergeant, I saw a man in a red jacket run toward the parking garage. This lady never moved from here. Boone didn't even look at her. Nobody asked you. But the security cameras? I said nobody asked you. Lena swallowed. She isn't the person you're looking for. Boone turned toward her slowly. You want to interfere with a police investigation? No, I just want you to look at the evidence. The evidence, Boone replied coldly, is standing right in front of me. Across the square, Caleb noticed the same red-jacketed man disappearing behind another row of parked cars. He instinctively pointed. Sergeant, if we leave now, we might still catch. Boone cut him off. We're staying. Caleb frowned. But that's where the suspect... I gave you an order. Caleb fell silent. Naomi watched the exchange carefully. She had spent years observing witnesses on the stand. People often revealed far more through hesitation than words. Caleb wasn't afraid of making a mistake. He was afraid of his own sergeant. Boone grabbed Naomi's wrist. You're coming with us. Am I under arrest? You'll find out. For what charge? You'll find out. You're required to tell me. Boone stepped closer until only inches separated them. You know what your problem is? No. You think because you're calm, you're smarter than everyone wearing a badge. Naomi metistare. I think everyone wearing a badge is responsible for following the Constitution. A murmur spread through the crowd. Boone's jaw clenched. Officer Megan whispered, She's recording this in her head. I know, Boone muttered. Then, without warning, he yanked Naomi's arm behind her back. Hands behind you. I am not resisting. Stop resisting. I haven't moved. The command echoed through the square, even though Naomi remained perfectly still. People began filming from every angle. One elderly man quietly shook his head. A mother covered her young daughter's eyes before leading her away. Caleb hesitated again. Sergeant, body cameras are recording. Boone answered without turning around. Good. He believed the footage would support whatever report he wrote later. Metal clicked. The handcuffs locked around Naomi's wrists. She closed her eyes briefly as the steel tightened against her skin. You're hurting her, Lena shouted. Officer Megan immediately pointed toward Lena. Step back unless you want another pair of cuffs. Lena froze. Boone leaned close to Naomi's ear. You had every chance to cooperate. I did cooperate. No. You demanded obedience. For a fraction of a second, Boone lost control of his expression. He hated being corrected, especially in front of witnesses, especially by someone who refused to look frightened. His voice rose. Kneel. Naomi remained standing. There is no lawful reason for that order. Boone shoved her shoulder with both hands. She lost her balance. Her knees slammed against the stone for the second time that day. Gasps erupted across Liberty Square. One phone captured everything. Another streamed it live. Caleb instinctively stepped forward. Sergeant, enough. Boone shot him a warning glance. Either back me up or explain to Internal Affairs why you abandoned your partner. Caleb slowly stepped back, his face pale. Naomi lifted her head despite the pain. She looked directly at every camera pointed toward her. Then she spoke clearly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Please remember what you see today. Boone laughed. They'll remember exactly what I tell them happened. He nodded toward Megan. Transport her. As Megan guided Naomi toward the patrol vehicle, the woman whose purse had been stolen suddenly pushed through the crowd. She looked confused. Officer, I don't think that's her. Boone stopped walking. What did you say? The man I saw. I'm pretty sure he was a young guy. Boone answered without hesitation. Ma'am, stressful situations affect memory. We've got this under control. The woman looked uncertain but said nothing more. Naomi climbed into the back seat without another word. The patrol car door slammed shut. Through the tinted glass, she watched Liberty Square disappear behind them. She wasn't thinking about the humiliation. She was thinking about every sentence Boone had spoken, every witness, every camera, every decision, because somewhere inside that growing list of mistakes, justice had already begun building its case. The patrol car rolled through downtown Westbridge in complete silence. Naomi Carter sat upright in the back seat, her wrists still locked behind her. Every bump in the road drove the metal cuffs deeper into her skin, but she refused to complain. Officer Megan Price glanced at her through the rearview mirror. You're awfully quiet. Naomi answered without emotion. There's nothing to say. Megan smirked. Most people cry by now. Naomi looked out the window. I've learned that truth doesn't become stronger because someone raises their voice. Megan rolled her eyes. You really think you're teaching us something? Before Naomi could answer, Sergeant Travis Boone's radio crackled. Unit 12. Be advised, possible suspect vehicle located near the east parking structure. Boone grabbed the microphone. Already occupied. Another unit can handle it. Caleb Ross turned toward him in disbelief. Sergeant, that's probably the actual thief. Boone kept driving. Our arrest comes first. Caleb stared out the windshield. He knew exactly what that meant. They weren't looking for the truth anymore. They were protecting a decision. The booking area inside Westbridge Police Department smelled of old coffee and disinfectant. Boone removed Naomi from the patrol car. Fingerprint her. A civilian technician hesitated. What's the charge? Boone answered without blinking. Disorderly conduct, obstruction, resisting lawful commands. Naomi looked directly at the technician. I have resisted nothing. Boone slammed a clipboard onto the counter. See? She's still refusing to cooperate. The technician quietly lowered his eyes and continued processing the paperwork. Naomi recognized the expression immediately. He didn't believe Boone. He simply didn't believe he had the authority to challenge him. After her fingerprints were taken, Megan led Naomi into a small interview room with gray walls and a single metal table. The handcuffs remained on. Minutes passed, then an hour. No one asked her a single question. No one presented evidence. No one explained why she was still being held. Finally, Boone entered carrying a thin folder. He tossed it onto the table. You've got two choices. Naomi remained silent. You sign a statement admitting you became argumentative during a lawful investigation, and this ends today. He slid a pen across the table. Or, Boone smiled, or I make sure every prosecutor in this county knows you're the woman who fought with police officers in the middle of downtown. Naomi didn't even glance at the document. I won't sign something that isn't true. Boone leaned over the table. You're making your own life harder. No. She met his eyes. You're making yours harder. His smile disappeared. You still think somebody important is coming to rescue you? I don't need rescuing. No? No. Boone laughed. That's funny, because from where I'm standing, you're handcuffed in an interrogation room. Naomi's voice never changed. And from where I'm sitting, every minute you're keeping me here without legal justification is another minute you'll eventually have to explain. Boone stared at her for several long seconds. Then he picked up the unsigned statement. We'll see how confident you are tonight. He walked out, slamming the door. Outside the interview room, Caleb caught up with him. Sergeant, what? The victim just identified another suspect. Boone kept walking. She wasn't certain. She said the man we arrested isn't the person she saw. Boone stopped. No, she said the woman we arrested. Caleb corrected himself. She specifically said Miss Carter isn't the thief. Boone looked around to make sure no one else was listening. Then he lowered his voice. You're new here, Ross. Yes, sir. So let me teach you something. He tapped the folder against Caleb's chest. If we release her now, every phone recording from that square becomes a headline. Caleb frowned. But if she's innocent, Boone interrupted. She embarrassed me in front of half the city. That doesn't change the facts. Boone stepped even closer. In this department, perception becomes fact unless somebody proves otherwise. Caleb felt his stomach tighten. He had entered law enforcement believing officers existed to protect people. For the first time since graduating from the academy, he wondered whether protecting the badge had become more important than protecting the truth. Across town, Arthur Carter looked at the untouched lunch sitting on his dining table. His daughter never missed lunch with him. He checked his watch. Then his phone. Still nothing. He dialed Naomi again. Straight to voicemail. Arthur smiled uneasily. She must be driving. Yet something in his heart felt wrong. Back at the station, Naomi heard footsteps outside. The door opened. Instead of Boone, an older man entered wearing a white command shirt, Chief Harold Bennett. He studied Naomi for several seconds before sitting opposite her. You're Naomi Carter. I am. You've caused quite a scene today. I didn't force anyone onto the ground. Bennett ignored the remark. You seem educated. I've been fortunate. He folded his hands. Here's my advice. Naomi waited. Forget today happened. She looked at him carefully. What do you mean? We'll release you. For a crime I didn't commit? For an incident that doesn't need to become something bigger. Naomi understood immediately. He wasn't interested in justice. He was negotiating silence. Bennett continued. No complaints. No lawsuits. No interviews. You walk away, and we all move on. Naomi asked quietly. And if I refuse? His expression cooled. You'll discover this city can become a very uncomfortable place. For the first time that day, Naomi allowed herself a faint smile. Not because she found his threat amusing, because she realized something important. Neither Boone nor Bennett had asked a single question about who she really was. They had judged her before learning her name. Bennett slid a release form across the table. Sign this acknowledgement that officers acted appropriately during today's encounter. Naomi pushed it back. I won't sign away the truth. The room fell silent. Outside the interview room, Daniel Reed's name flashed repeatedly on Naomi's recovered phone. unanswered for the ninth time. Inside the federal judicial office in Washington, concern was quickly turning into alarm. Someone had just informed Daniel that the woman scheduled to be sworn in before the tribunal tomorrow morning had vanished without explanation. And the search for Naomi Carter was about to begin. Naomi Carter walked out of the Westbridge Police Department just after sunset. The bruises around her wrists had already turned dark purple beneath the fading light. She carried her torn handbag in one hand and the crushed package meant for her father in the other. She had refused to sign Chief Harold Bennett's release form. She had refused to admit to crimes she never committed. Most importantly, she had refused to surrender her dignity. Across the parking lot, Daniel Reed stepped out of a black sedan before Naomi could reach her own car. There you are. For the first time that day, concern replaced Naomi's calm expression. You came yourself. You disappeared for almost 7 hours. Daniel looked at the marks on her wrists. His face hardened. What happened? Naomi glanced toward the police station. Not here. 20 minutes later, they sat inside Arthur Carter's living room. Arthur gently placed a bag of ice around Naomi's wrists, struggling to hide the anger in his eyes. They made you kneel? Naomi nodded once. They handcuffed you in front of everyone? Another nod. Arthur looked away before she could see the tears gathering in his eyes. I spent my whole career teaching children that justice protects decent people. His voice trembled. And today they humiliated my daughter for obeying the law. Naomi reached across the table. They embarrassed themselves, Dad. Daniel quietly opened his laptop. The Federal Judicial Office has already noticed your absence. I know. They're asking whether tomorrow's swearing-in ceremony should be postponed. Naomi remained silent for several seconds. Finally, she spoke. No. Daniel looked surprised. You still intend to preside over the tribunal? I intend to follow every ethical rule. She folded her hand. What happened today changes nothing. It changes everything, Daniel replied. They'll accuse you of personal revenge. Naomi slowly shook her head. Only if I stop following the law. She explained exactly what she intended to do. First, she would immediately disclose the entire incident to the Judicial Ethics Committee. Second, she would formally notify the tribunal that she had become a direct victim. Third, she would request written guidance defining the limits of her participation. I won't hide what happened, Naomi said. But I also won't let what happened destroy an investigation that began long before today. Daniel smiled slightly. That's exactly why they appointed you. The following morning, Westbridge woke to breaking news. Television screens across the city showed Sergeant Travis Boone standing behind a podium inside police headquarters. Chief Bennett stood beside him. Boone spoke confidently. Yesterday, our officers safely detained an aggressive individual who repeatedly refused lawful commands during an active theft investigation. Naomi watched the broadcast from Arthur's living room. The television displayed edited cell phone footage. The video began only after Boone had already pushed her to the ground. Everything before that moment had disappeared. Arthur stared in disbelief. They cut the recording. Daniel nodded. They removed every second that made them look responsible. Boone continued speaking. Our officers showed remarkable restraint. Naomi quietly muted the television. They're shaping public opinion before evidence appears. Daniel leaned forward. Exactly. Which means they're afraid. Within hours, social media exploded. Some viewers questioned why officers had forced an apparently calm woman onto her knees. Others accepted Boone's version without hesitation. Comments flooded local news pages. If she had cooperated, none of this would have happened. Stop resisting means stop resisting. Police don't arrest people for no reason. Arthur read several comments before placing his phone face down. They're judging you without knowing anything. Naomi answered softly. They're judging the story they were given. Her own phone vibrated continuously. Unknown numbers. Reporters. Television producers. Activists. She ignored every call. The truth needed evidence, not interviews. Meanwhile, inside Westbridge Police Department, Caleb Ross sat alone at his desk. He opened the official incident report Boone had submitted. His heartbeat quickened. Several statements had changed. The report claimed Naomi had lunged toward officers. That never happened. It stated she had attempted to conceal evidence. There had been no evidence. It even claimed she ignored repeated requests to identify herself. Caleb remembered clearly. She had answered every question calmly. He opened the body camera upload log. One file was missing. Boone's camera. Caleb refreshed the screen. Still missing. He quietly whispered to himself, "No." At that moment, Boone appeared behind him. "You look confused." Caleb quickly minimized the report. "I noticed your body camera footage hasn't uploaded." Boone smiled without warmth. "Equipment malfunction." "Again? You got a problem with that?" Caleb hesitated. No, Sergeant. Boone leaned over his desk. Listen carefully. His voice dropped almost to a whisper. You've got a long career ahead of you. Caleb nodded. Don't ruin it by worrying about paperwork. Then Boone walked away. Caleb waited until he disappeared. Only then did he reopen the report. Every instinct told him something far bigger than a wrongful arrest was happening. Across town, Lena Brooks unlocked her flower shop. She hadn't slept. Her hands trembled as she replayed yesterday's events. Fortunately, she had remembered one important detail. Her security cameras automatically uploaded recordings to cloud storage every evening. The local recording device inside the shop could be stolen. The cloud copy could not. She signed into her account. The progress bar slowly loaded. Then the full video appeared. Every second, Boone throwing Naomi's phone. Boone ignoring Caleb's warning. Boone shoving Naomi onto her knees. Most chilling of all, Megan's voice. Sergeant, she doesn't match the suspect description. Boone's answer came immediately. I'll write the report. Lena stared at the screen. She suddenly understood. This wasn't just misconduct. It was deliberate. Before she could download the file, headlights flashed through the front window. A dark SUV stopped across the street. Two men remained inside without getting out. Watching, Lena instinctively closed her laptop. Something deep inside warned her. Someone else already knew the video existed. Lena Brooks didn't move. The black SUV remained parked across the street. Its engine idled quietly while two men sat inside without speaking. She slowly closed her laptop. Her instincts told her one thing. The video had suddenly become dangerous. Instead of downloading the file immediately, she copied the cloud link into an encrypted folder and emailed a backup to an account belonging to her younger brother, Marcus, who lived nearly 200 miles away in Richmond. Only after the confirmation arrived did she breathe again. The SUV pulled away without warning. Lena watched until it disappeared around the corner. She whispered to herself, they know. Across town, Caleb Ross couldn't stop thinking about the missing body camera footage. Long after his shift ended, he remained inside the nearly empty station. He quietly logged into the department's digital evidence system. Normally, every body camera automatically uploaded to a secure server. Only supervisors possessed authority to delete or suspend recording. Boone's camera showed one simple status. File removed administrative hold. Caleb frowned. Administrative holds required written approval. He searched the authorization law. Nothing. No request. No explanation. No signature. Someone had bypassed procedure. He opened older reports Boone had filed over the previous 3 years. 1 became 5. 5 became 12. A disturbing pattern emerged. The wording barely changed. Subject became verbally aggressive. Subject resisted lawful commands. Minimal force applied. Entire paragraphs appeared almost identical, copied from report to report. Caleb leaned back in his chair. Either Sergeant Boone encountered the exact same situation dozens of times, or someone had been manufacturing the same story over and over again. A quiet voice came from behind him. Working late? Caleb quickly minimized the screen. Chief Harold Bennett stood in the doorway. Just finishing paperwork, Chief. Bennett smiled politely. Good. His eyes drifted toward Caleb's monitor. We need officers who understand loyalty. Caleb nodded carefully. I understand. Good. Bennett placed one hand on Caleb's shoulder. In this department, he said quietly, we solve problems together. Then he walked away. Caleb waited until the footsteps faded. Only then did he reopen Boone's files. His hands were trembling now. Not from fear, from realization. This wasn't one bad arrest. This was a system. Meanwhile, Naomi and Daniel Reed met inside a small community church on the edge of Westbridge. It was quiet, private, far away from cameras. Daniel spread several folders across a wooden table. The Judicial Ethics Committee responded. Naomi looked up. They approved your disclosure. They did. Daniel slid the letter toward her. You must disclose your status as the victim in this matter before proceedings begin. I expected that. You may continue supervising procedural matters. He paused. But disciplinary findings must be reached collectively by the 3-judge panel. Naomi nodded. Exactly as they should. Daniel smiled. I've worked with judges for 15 years. Yes? Most would fight to keep complete authority. Naomi folded the letter. If justice depends on one person, it isn't justice. Before Daniel could answer, the church door opened. Lena hurried inside, carrying her laptop. I found it. Naomi stood immediately. The recording? Lena nodded. The entire thing. She opened the laptop. The video began several minutes before Boone approached Naomi. The camera overlooked nearly the entire square. Everyone watched in silence. The young man in the red jacket clearly appeared running toward the parking garage. Caleb pointed after him. Boone ignored him. Then another moment appeared. Megan's voice. "Sergeant, she doesn't fit the description." Boone answered without hesitation. "I'll write the report." The room became completely silent. Daniel replayed that sentence twice, then a third time. Finally, he looked at Naomi. "This changes everything." Naomi slowly shook her head. "No, it proves everything." Daniel immediately copied the video onto 3 encrypted drives. "No one keeps the only copy." Lena nodded. "I already backed it up." Daniel smiled. "Good." Naomi looked toward Lena. "Thank you." Lena lowered her eyes. "I almost stayed quiet." "You didn't." "I was scared." "So was everyone else." Naomi placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding the truth matters more." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I've never testified in court." Naomi answered gently. "You won't be alone." Later that afternoon, Caleb's department email chimed. "Effective immediately, Officer Caleb Ross is suspended pending administrative review for unauthorized access to departmental records." His heart sank. He hadn't copied anything. He hadn't leaked anything. He had simply looked. Boone walked past his desk holding the suspension notice. "Told you paperwork could be dangerous." Caleb stood. "I didn't violate policy." Boone smiled. "You questioned people who wear more stripes than you." He leaned closer. "That's the only policy that matters." 2 internal affairs officers approached. One quietly removed Caleb's badge. The other collected his service weapon. Several officers watched. None spoke. Caleb left the station carrying only a cardboard box. As he reached his car, his personal phone vibrated. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. "Officer Ross? Who's this?" "My name is Daniel Reed. Caleb Froze. I'm calling on behalf of the Federal Civil Accountability Tribunal." Silence. Then Daniel spoke again. "We believe you know the truth." Caleb closed his eyes. For the first time since joining the police department, someone wasn't asking him to protect the badge. Someone was asking him to protect the truth. He looked back once at the station where he had dreamed of building a career. Then he quietly answered, "When do you want to meet?" The suspension letter had barely reached Caleb Ross's hands before Sergeant Travis Boone realized something far more dangerous than a missing officer. Someone was building a case. Inside Chief Harold Bennett's office, the atmosphere felt heavier than usual. Boone shut the door behind him. "Ross knows too much." Bennett looked up from a stack of complaint files. "Did he copy anything?" "I don't know. That's not the answer I asked for." Boone clenched his jaw. "I caught him looking through old reports." Bennett slowly removed his glasses. "You should have stopped this before it reached my office." Boone folded his arms. "I did." "No." Bennett's voice hardened. "You embarrassed a woman in the middle of Liberty Square while dozens of people recorded it." Boone fired back immediately. "She challenged me. And now Washington is asking questions." The room fell silent. Finally, Bennett stood. "Destroy anything that can be misunderstood." Boone frowned. "The complaint archive? Everything." Beneath police headquarters sat an old records room rarely visited by anyone except supervisors. Metal filing cabinets stretched across the dim basement. Boone unlocked a gray cabinet marked Citizen Complaints. He pulled out thick folders. Some dated back nearly a decade. Each contained names, photographs, witness statements, complaints that had quietly disappeared without investigation. Boone dropped the first box onto a rolling cart. Minutes later, Bennett arrived carrying another. Neither man spoke. A paper shredder roared to life. Page after page disappeared into its steel teeth. One folder caught Boone's attention. Inside was a complaint filed 3 years earlier. The allegation read, "Forced innocent black resident to the ground despite contradictory witness statements." Boone didn't even finish reading. He fed it into the machine. Across town, Daniel Reed parked outside a small coffee shop. Caleb Ross climbed out of his car looking exhausted. He no longer wore a uniform, only jeans and a gray sweatshirt. Daniel extended his hand. "Thank you for coming." Caleb didn't shake it immediately. "If anybody sees us, they already assume we're talking." Caleb finally sat down. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Daniel broke the silence. "Did Sergeant Boone falsify his report?" Caleb stared into his untouched coffee. "I took an oath." "So did he." Caleb closed his eyes. He ignored the actual suspect. Daniel remained quiet. He forced Miss Carter onto her knees. Another pause. "The report wasn't true." Daniel slid a legal pad across the table. "I don't want rumors. I want facts." Caleb slowly began writing. Times, conversation, comment. Every detail he could remember. When he finished, he pushed the paper back. "I should have stopped him." Daniel looked at him carefully. "No. You should tell the truth now." That same afternoon, Naomi arrived at Westbridge Memorial Hospital carrying fresh flowers. Arthur had been admitted earlier after experiencing chest pains brought on by stress. The room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of a heart monitor. Arthur smiled when he saw her. "You always did hate hospitals." "You still do." She placed the flowers beside the window. Arthur studied the bruises on her wrists. "They're darker. They'll heal." He looked directly at her. "What about the rest of you?" Naomi sat beside his bed. "I keep asking myself if I should have simply told Boone who I was." Arthur didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the window where the afternoon sun reflected against the city skyline. "If you'd done that," he finally said, "would he have treated the next woman any differently?" Naomi slowly shook her head. "No." Arthur smiled gently. "Then you made the right choice." She lowered her eyes. "I never wanted you involved. My daughter." Arthur reached for her hand. Justice was never supposed to be comfortable. Before Naomi could reply, Daniel entered carrying his phone. "We've got another problem." He handed the screen to Naomi. A local political organization had just released a public statement. Federal judge candidate uses personal incident to target local police. Naomi Sahil, they found out. They don't know everything, but they know enough. Within minutes, television stations repeated the accusation. Commentators questioned whether Naomi should be removed from any future proceedings involving Westbridge police. Some demanded her resignation before she officially assumed office. Arthur quietly watched the broadcast. "They're trying to make you the story." Naomi nodded. "So no one talks about what actually happened." Meanwhile, Officer Megan Price sat alone inside her apartment. She replayed Lena's security footage for what felt like the 100th time. Every replay made the same sentence harder to ignore. "Sergeant, she doesn't fit the description. I'll write the report." She pressed pause, then covered her face with both hands. Her phone rang. "Boone," she answered reluctantly. "You've been quiet. I'm tired. You need to stay that way." Silence. Then Boone continued. "If anybody asks, I know what to say." "No." His tone sharpened. "You say nothing. What if federal investigators contact me?" "They won't." "And if they do?" Boone's answer came coldly. "You remember who signed your promotion papers?" The line went dead. Megan stared at the silent phone. For the first time, she realized she wasn't Boone's partner. She was his insurance policy. And insurance was always disposable. Late that evening, Caleb returned to police headquarters. His suspension prevented him from entering through the front. Instead, he parked behind the building near the evidence-loading dock. Using an old maintenance entrance he still knew from training, he quietly slipped inside. The basement hallway was empty. The shredding room door stood slightly open. Inside, shredded paper overflowed from large collection bins. Caleb spotted one file lying half inside the machine. Someone had missed it. He pulled it free. The cover read, "Internal Complaint No. 17-204. Attached was a handwritten note. Pattern of fabricated reports involving Sergeant Travis Boone. Recommend immediate investigation. Status: closed, no action taken." Caleb's pulse quickened. This wasn't one complaint. It was proof that someone inside the department had tried to expose Boone years earlier. He quickly photographed every page with his phone. Just as he slipped the file back into place, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Boone's voice drifted closer. "I know somebody's down here." Caleb's heart pounded. He looked around desperately. There was nowhere to run. Caleb Ross pressed himself against the concrete wall as Sergeant Travis Boone's footsteps echoed through the basement. "I know somebody's down here," Boone called. The beam of a flashlight swept across the rows of filing cabinets. Caleb held his breath. His phone, still containing photographs of the forgotten complaint file, rested in his jacket pocket. If Boone found it, everything would disappear. Boone entered the shredding room. He looked around slowly. Empty boxes, overflowing bins filled with shredded paper, a humming industrial shredder. Nothing else. He cursed under his breath. Probably a rat. After another long glance around the room, he turned and walked away. Only when the heavy door slammed shut did Caleb finally breathe. He didn't wait another second. Using the maintenance exit, he slipped out of the building and drove straight toward Daniel Reed's temporary office. Daniel was already waiting. When Caleb placed his phone on the table, Daniel opened the photographs one by one. Neither man spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Daniel whispered, "My God." The handwritten recommendation was unmistakable. Pattern of fabricated reports involving Sergeant Travis Boone. Recommend immediate investigation. Stamped beneath it in red ink were 4 words. Closed. No further action. Daniel looked at Caleb. "This proves they knew." Caleb nodded. "They buried every complaint." Daniel immediately scanned the photographs into an encrypted federal evidence database. The originals may disappear tonight, but these won't. The next morning, the Federal Civil Accountability Tribunal officially convened inside the Westbridge Federal Courthouse. Television crews crowded the entrance. Local reporters expected a routine hearing concerning allegations against several officers. No one knew the full truth. Inside a conference room reserved for tribunal members, Naomi Carter sat quietly reviewing procedural notes. She wore a dark navy judicial suit instead of a robe. Her appointment would not become public until the hearing formally opened. Daniel entered carrying several sealed evidence folders. Lena's video has been authenticated. Naomi nodded. Good. Caleb's statement has been notarized. Good. The complaint files match departmental records. She closed the folder in front of her. Then we let the evidence speak. Daniel hesitated. You understand what's about to happen? I do. Once your identity becomes public, nothing about my life will be private again. Daniel offered a sympathetic smile. You've thought this through. I've had 7 hours in a holding cell to think. Across the courthouse, Sergeant Travis Boone adjusted his dress uniform inside a witness waiting room. Officer Megan Price sat several chairs away. Neither spoke. Chief Harold Bennett entered, carrying a confident smile. Our attorney believes this hearing will end before lunch. Boone relaxed. I told you. Bennett straightened his tie. They have one emotional complainant. They have edited cell phone videos. They have nothing. Megan looked toward the floor. They also have Lena Brooks. Bennett dismissed the concern with a wave. A florist doesn't outweigh sworn officers. Boone laughed. Exactly. An assistant stepped into the room. The tribunal will begin in 5 minutes. The public gallery quickly filled. Community members, journalists, civil rights observers, police officers. Arthur Carter quietly took a seat near the back. His hands rested calmly on a cane, but his eyes searched the courtroom door. Lena entered moments later. She noticed Arthur and offered a small nod. Caleb arrived under federal escort. The whispers began immediately. That's the suspended officer. He switched sides. No, Arthur quietly murmured. He chose the truth. Inside the courtroom, everyone stood as the tribunal clerk arranged several thick evidence binders across the judge's bench. Boone watched confidently from the defense table. He leaned toward his attorney. Where's Carter? The attorney shrugged. Probably sitting with the witnesses. Boone smirked. Good. I want her watching. The courtroom doors opened. 3 federal marshals entered first. Behind them walked 2 senior federal judges. Everyone rose. Boone barely glanced at them. Then one final figure appeared. She walked with calm, measured steps. Black judicial robe. Silver bracelet visible beneath the sleeve. Perfectly composed. Naomi Carter. Boone frowned. What is she doing? The courtroom fell completely silent. The clerk stepped forward. All rise for the Honorable Judge Eleanor Whitfield. She paused. Judge Michael Alvarez. Another pause. Then the final announcement echoed through the courtroom. And the Honorable Naomi Elise Carter, presiding judge of the Federal Civil Accountability Tribunal. Time seemed to stop. Boone's face drained of color. Megan's mouth fell open. Chief Bennett slowly stood from his chair, unable to hide the shock spreading across his face. Arthur quietly closed his eyes. Not in triumph, in gratitude. Naomi reached the center seat of the bench. She did not look toward Boone immediately. She first acknowledged the other 2 judges. Only after taking her seat did she raise her eyes. They met Boone's for the first time since Liberty Square. His confidence vanished instantly. The woman he had forced onto her knees, the woman whose phone he had thrown onto the pavement, the woman he had called a liar, now sat above him wearing the robe of a federal judge. Boone instinctively half rose from his chair. Your Honor. His voice cracked. This is impossible. Naomi's expression remained perfectly neutral. The record will reflect that all members of this tribunal have previously disclosed every potential ethical consideration, she said calmly. Any findings issued today will be reached collectively, according to federal law. She paused only long enough for every person in the courtroom to absorb her words. This proceeding is not about revenge. Her gaze settled on Boone. It is about accountability. The courtroom clerk reached toward the evidence monitor. Your Honors, he announced. The tribunal is prepared to play Exhibit 1. The lights dimmed. Liberty Square appeared on the screen. And for the first time, Sergeant Travis Boone was forced to watch the truth exactly as everyone else would see it. The courtroom remained silent as the first video filled the large evidence screen. No narration, no editing, no dramatic music. Only the raw recording from Lena Brooks' flower shop. Everyone watched Sergeant Travis Boone stop beside Naomi Carter. They heard Naomi speak calmly. I've done nothing wrong. Please check the security cameras. They watched Boone rip her handbag away. Her belongings scattered across the pavement. Then Officer Caleb Ross's voice came through the courtroom speakers. "Sergeant, the suspect is heading toward the parking garage." The video clearly showed a young man in a red jacket disappearing into the distance. Boone never even looked. Instead, every eye in the courtroom watched him shove Naomi toward the ground. Another voice followed, Officer Megan Price. "Sergeant, she doesn't fit the description." Then Boone answered with the sentence that froze the room. "I'll write the report." The video ended. No one spoke. Judge Eleanor Whitfield leaned slightly forward. "Sergeant Boone." Her voice echoed across the courtroom. "Did you hear Officer Price state that Miss Carter did not match the suspect description?" Boone swallowed. "I believed additional circumstances justified continued detention." Judge Michael Alvarez asked the next question. "What additional circumstances?" Boone hesitated. "Her behavior." Alvarez looked down at the report. "You described Miss Carter as aggressive." "Yes." Judge Whitfield pressed a button. Another recording began. This one came from a bystander's phone. Naomi never shouted, never threatened anyone, never attempted to flee. She simply asked one question: "Am I being detained?" Judge Whitfield looked back at Boone. "Point to the aggressive conduct." Boone stared at the screen. His attorney slowly lowered his pen. No answer came. The tribunal clerk called the next witness, Officer Caleb Ross. Caleb walked to the witness stand. He raised his right hand, took the oath, and sat down. His hands trembled. His voice did not. Federal prosecutor Amanda Ellis approached. "Officer Ross, were you present during Miss Carter's detention?" "Yes." "Did Sergeant Boone receive information that another suspect had fled toward the parking garage?" "Yes." "What did he do?" "He ignored it." "Did Miss Carter physically resist arrest?" "No." "Did she threaten any officer?" "No." "Was the official report accurate?" Caleb took a long breath. "No." The courtroom filled with whispers. Amanda Ellis held up Boone's incident report. "Who wrote this?" "Sergeant Boone." "Is it true?" "No." "What parts are false?" Caleb looked directly at Boone. "The report says Miss Carter lunged toward officers. She never moved. It says she refused to identify herself. She answered every question. It says minimal force was required because she resisted." Caleb's voice became firmer. "She remained calm from beginning to end." Amanda nodded. "No further questions." Boone's attorney stood. "Officer Ross, you were suspended, correct?" "Yes." "So you're angry." "I'm disappointed." "You have a motive to lie." Caleb answered immediately. "No. I have a reason to finally tell the truth." The next witness was Megan Price. She walked slowly toward the stand. Boone refused to look at her. After taking the oath, she kept her eyes fixed on the tabletop. Amanda Ellis asked quietly, "Officer Price, did Sergeant Boone instruct you to sign an inaccurate report?" Megan closed her eyes. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Finally, "Yes." Boone shot to his feet. "She's lying!" Judge Whitfield struck the gavel. "Sit down, Sergeant Boone." Boone remained standing. "She agreed with everything." Megan turned toward him for the first time. "No, I was afraid of you." The courtroom became completely still. Amanda continued. "Did Sergeant Boone know Miss Carter wasn't the suspect?" "Yes." "Why wasn't she released?" Megan's eyes filled with tears. He said. She struggled to finish. He couldn't let everyone think he'd made a mistake in front of the whole city. Amanda took one final step closer. "Who decided to alter the report?" "Sergeant Boone." "Who approved placing the body camera footage on administrative hold?" Megan slowly looked toward the defense table. "Chief Harold Bennett." Every head turned. Chief Bennett's face turned pale. The clerk displayed another exhibit, a departmental authorization log. Judge Alvarez examined it carefully. "There is no lawful authorization for removing Sergeant Boone's body camera recording." Amanda nodded. "Correct, Your Honor. Our forensic examination shows the file was manually placed under administrative hold less than 20 minutes after Miss Carter entered the station." Judge Whitfield looked toward Bennett. "Chief Bennett, did you authorize this?" Bennett stood. "I invoke my Fifth Amendment right." A wave of astonishment swept through the gallery. Arthur Carter quietly lowered his head, not because he was surprised, because the truth no longer needed his daughter's words. The evidence was speaking for itself. Amanda Ellis called one final witness, Lena Brooks. Lena walked confidently to the stand. She described the events exactly as they happened. Then she explained the cloud backup. "And the original recording?" Amanda asked. Lena smiled faintly. "It still exists." She handed a federal evidence drive to the clerk. "There are 6 identical copies." Boone slowly sat down. For the first time since entering the courtroom, he understood there was no report left to rewrite. No witness left to intimidate. No evidence left to erase. Judge Whitfield exchanged a long glance with Judges Alvarez and Carter. Naomi remained calm. She spoke only once. Let the record reflect that truth survives when ordinary people choose courage over fear. Before anyone could react, the rear courtroom doors opened. Two federal marshals entered with sealed arrest packets already signed by a federal grand jury. They walked directly toward Sergeant Travis Boone. The courtroom doors closed behind the two federal marshals. Neither of them hurried. Neither of them needed to. One stopped beside Sergeant Travis Boone. The other stood behind Chief Harold Bennett. The lead marshal unfolded a document bearing the seal of the United States District Court. Sergeant Travis Boone, his voice carried through the silent courtroom. You are under arrest, pursuant to a federal grand jury indictment, charging you with deprivation of civil rights under color of law, obstruction of justice, falsifying official records, conspiracy to conceal evidence, and making false statements during a federal proceeding. For several seconds, Boone simply stared. This can't be happening. The marshal calmly replied, it already has. He reached for Boone's wrists. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the courtroom. Ironically, Boone instinctively pulled one arm away. I didn't resist. No one answered. The words hung in the air, reminding everyone of how many innocent people had heard those same accusations. Across the room, another marshal approached Chief Harold Bennett. Chief Harold Bennett, you are under arrest for obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, abuse of official authority, and conspiracy to conceal repeated civil rights violations. Bennett closed his eyes. He offered no resistance. His career ended with the same quiet shame that years of silence had created. Officer Megan Price remained seated. Tears rolled down her face as she watched the men she had followed leave the courtroom in handcuffs. Judge Eleanor Whitfield looked toward her. Officer Price, your cooperation has been noted by this tribunal. It does not erase your misconduct, but truth told before it is too late still matters. Megan nodded silently. She knew forgiveness and accountability were not the same thing. After a short recess, the three-judge panel returned. Judge Whitfield read the tribunal's unanimous findings. The evidence demonstrated a deliberate pattern of unconstitutional policing. The panel concluded that Sergeant Boone knowingly detained an innocent citizen despite contradictory evidence, fabricated official reports, ignored exculpatory information, and ordered the concealment of body camera footage. Chief Bennett knowingly enabled that conduct by suppressing complaints, failing to investigate credible allegations, and authorizing actions designed to prevent accountability. The tribunal ordered the complete transfer of all related investigations to federal prosecutors. Every unresolved citizen complaint connected to Boone's unit would be reopened. Every affected individual would receive independent review. The courtroom erupted into quiet applause before Judge Whitfield gently raised a hand. This courtroom celebrates justice with dignity. The applause stopped immediately. Outside the courthouse, national media waited beneath a forest of television cameras. Questions flew in every direction. Judge Carter, did you know Sergeant Boone would be arrested today? Do you feel vindicated? Naomi paused on the courthouse steps. The afternoon sunlight reflected off the courthouse columns behind her. She spoke slowly. This has never been about me. It has always been about whether the law protects every citizen equally. Another reporter shouted, what did you think when Sergeant Boone forced you to your knees? Naomi looked toward Liberty Square, visible only a few blocks away. I remember something my father taught me. She smiled gently. He said people may force your body down. They cannot make your character kneel. No one asked another question. Weeks later, Westbridge began changing. The Department of Justice assigned independent monitors to oversee the police department. Every body camera recording would now upload automatically to an outside federal server, preventing local deletion or alteration. Anonymous reporting channels were created for officers who witnessed misconduct. Mandatory constitutional policing and ethics training became annual requirement. The City Council unanimously passed new local reforms known as the Public Dignity and Accountability Act, requiring independent review whenever force was used against an unarmed civilian. Caleb Ross returned to service, this time not as a patrol officer. He accepted a position within the newly created Office of Professional Accountability. His first assignment was helping reopen dozens of complaints that had once been buried in forgotten filing cabinets. Megan Price resigned before criminal sentencing. She later accepted responsibility in federal court and publicly apologized to several families whose complaints she had helped ignore. One quiet Saturday morning, Naomi returned to Liberty Square. No television crews followed her. No reporters waited. Arthur Carter walked beside her, leaning lightly on his cane. They stopped at the exact spot where she had been forced onto the stone pavement. The city had installed a simple bronze plaque nearby. It contained only one sentence: "Authority does not create dignity. It is measured by how dignity is protected." Arthur read it twice. "You wrote that?" Naomi smiled. "I suggested it." He looked proudly at his daughter. "No, you lived it." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Children laughed near the fountain. The flower shop across the square displayed fresh yellow roses in the window. Lena waved from inside. Caleb passed in plain clothes and offered a respectful nod. Life had moved forward, but the lesson remained. Naomi looked toward the courthouse standing beyond the square. Justice, she realized, was never guaranteed by robes, badges, titles, or building. It survived only when ordinary people refused to surrender the truth even when they stood alone. Real justice is not measured by how much power someone holds, but by how faithfully they protect the dignity of others. Never underestimate the quiet courage of those who choose truth over fear. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories that remind us why integrity always matters.